Chapter 6. The jeep hummed along the open road as I trained my eyes to the rearview mirror, watching for the flash of trailing headlights. But all I saw was the dim glow of the grid as it faded behind us. I shifted in my seat, hands stiff from my unrelenting grip on the steering wheel, but my heart had begun to slow its anxious rhythm. We had made it out. We were safe. But what did that mean? Like a caged bird thrust into the wilderness, I was untethered and adrift in a landscape I really knew nothing of, the fortress of concrete walls and checkpoints that had been built around our society kept us so far removed from the breath of nature, from the richness of life unfolding from earth. When had we stopped longing for that innate connection? The parched hills gave way to towering trees as spruce and pine as I wound deeper into the enclosure of the mountains, the canopy above us an emerald green now obscured in darkness. But it was a color I knew by memory. So many trips I had taken up this road, shuffling supplies and stealing quick visits with my medical travel pass. But my time had always been rushed. Stolen moments had kept me at a safe distance, always needing to keep the compartments of my life tidy and separate, terrified of what would happen if I let them get too close. Tires jostled beneath me as the smooth lines of the paved road now turned into dirt, kicking up dark clouds of dust that obscured my view out the back window. I craned my head to see Lilica, still fast asleep, her fist curled around her blanket, cheek resting against the seat. We had been driving for almost 3 hours now, just 10 more miles to go. Eventually the dense grove of trees thinned out and the hazy outlines of dwellings took shape in the distance. They always gave me a sense of comfort, these tiny shacks and log cabins tucked into the forest, a scattered assortment of ramshackle homes in various states of disrepair. There was a vibrancy and fortitude here, born of people living in pace with the land. The sharp glare of the headlights swept over the compound, and I cringed, feeling like a hostile invader with my bright electric beams plucked from a world so far removed from this one. I rolled the car to a stop beside a cabin and turned off the engine. The silence enveloped me like a blanket as I stepped out of the Jeep and slowly walked to the front door. The dim glow of the full moon struggled to pierce through the layer of haze, bathing the forest in a foggy blue light. My hand hesitated for a moment, suspended in the space between everything I had just left behind and the unknown future standing in front of me. Adrift with nothing left to hold me in place, my heart trembled against my chest like a hesitant bird. Would he accept me and Lilica? So much time stood between us, and the boundaries we formed had become so vast. But I was here, and there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, I knocked softly against the wooden door. There was the sound of shuffling feet, and then the clicking of a latch as the door opened to reveal the shadowed outline of Domine, his dark, tousled hair falling in waves that brushed against his shoulders. Seren? The deep, rich tone of his voice filled me with a rush of relief. It had been so long since I had seen him, and suddenly the tight thread of composure I'd been clinging to snapped. Tears escaped in a torrid stream down my face, my words tumbling out, breathless and frantic. I'm so sorry. I just showed up in the middle of the night like this, but something happened. I had to leave, and I didn't know where else to go. Warm arms enveloped me, the grounding scent of wood smoke and earth so uniquely his, and that's when I realized my whole body was shaking, the pent-up adrenaline finally releasing against him. It's okay. It's okay. He pressed me closer, the feel of his hands on my back like an anchor. What happened, Seren? Trendon, I choked out. He found my stash of medical supplies and threatened to turn me over to the authorities if I didn't check myself into the facility. Jesus Christ. He pulled back and grasped my shoulders, his eyes flashing, anger and concern written across the shadowed planes of his face. Does anyone know you're here? I shook my head, wiping away the tears on my cheeks. No, I don't think anybody knows I'm gone yet. Domain glanced wearily over at the Jeep, raking his hand through his hair. Well, they will soon. He snapped his head back to me. Wait, where's your daughter? I got her out too. She's in the back sleeping. Oh, thank God. He let out a sigh and motioned for me to step inside the cabin. The flare of a match lit up the darkness as Domain placed the flame against the wick of an oil lamp hanging by the door. illuminating the room in a muted orange glow. He swept his hand toward the small bed in the corner, sheets tossed haphazardly aside. "You can get her settled into the bed over there." Where are you going to sleep?" "I can sleep up in the loft." He crossed the room and knelt down to slide a wooden box from underneath the oak frame, pulling out some woolen blankets. "Are you sure?" He turned to me, his dark eyes piercing into mine. "Of course." I wrapped my arms around myself, looking back at the Jeep and what was left of my life now thrown into bags. In a matter of hours, I had become homeless, relying on what little Domain had to offer. The bitter sting of tears rose up once more, obscuring my vision, a mixture of relief and desperation tumbling inside. "I'm so sorry I just showed up like this." Domain's hand fell to my shoulder. "Seren, you know you've always been welcome here." "Have I?" I stared up at him, searching for the truth beneath the veil of his words. "Yes." His voice was gentle, but I could detect a flicker of hesitation hovering behind his eyes, a hidden sadness that matched the outline of my own. How many times had I fantasized about coming here and never leaving? How many times did I long for a life with him again, a life I had said goodbye to all those years ago? A trembling sigh escaped me, and I wrenched my gaze from his. "I just don't know what I'm going to do now."
We'll figure that out in the morning, okay?
He looked over at the Jeep parked beside the cabin.
But we do need to get rid of that car. Right now. They will track you.
"I know. I'll go get Lilica." I quickly made my way back outside and over to the Jeep, gently opening the door. She had shifted in her sleep and now lay across the seat, her head resting against my duffel bag.
She's so big.
Domain stood beside me, his voice a cautious whisper. "She is, isn't she?" The last time he saw her, she had been a baby. I had stopped taking her up here when she started to talk, afraid certain words would slip from her mouth around Trendon. Forest, cabin, Domain. Those had been my secret words for so many years now. Fragile strands I kept safely folded away from my marriage. I leaned over the seat and pulled Lilica into my arms. She made a soft, sleepy sound and instinctively clung to me as I carried her into the cabin. Placing her down on the bed, I tucked the blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes fluttered open in confusion for a moment, and I smoothed back the wisps of hair stuck to her cheeks. "Shh, go back to bed, sweetie." With a drowsy nod, she closed her eyes and curled into herself, the blanket clutched in her fist. What was I going to tell her when she woke in the morning? The threads of indecision wound through me as I watched her sink back into a deep sleep, giving me a few more hours of reprieve.
She looks just like you.
I turned to find Domain standing beside the bed with my bags. A smile faltered against my lips as I stood and took them from him. "Thanks for grabbing these."
Is there anything else you need to get out of the car?
His voice was low and an urgency lingered in his tone. I shook my head, placing the bags down beside the bed. "No, what do you think I should do with it?"
I'm going to get the Jeep out of here. Did you bring a cell phone or anything else that could track your location?
Suddenly remembering Trendon's phone, I bent down and sifted through my purse, pulling out both our phones. I placed them into Domain's open hand, along with the key fob. "Where are you going to take it?"
Somewhere further up into the woods.
Biting my lip, I stared out into the darkness beyond the window. "How are you going to get back?"
I'll walk.
Jesus. I let out a long exhale and ran my fingers through my hair. I should have thought all through this better. I clenched my hands together, suddenly realizing the heavy implications of being here, of possibly putting Domain at risk as well. "I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have come. I don't want to drag you into all of this. I just didn't know where else to go."
Seren, don't be sorry.
His hand wrapped around mine, stilling the words and the churning pace of my thoughts.
You got out. That's the important thing right now. The rest are minor details. And don't worry about me, okay?
He grabbed a mask hanging over the door and shoved it into his pocket along with the last remains of what had once been my life. Electrical devices composed of invisible fibers that tethered me to the grid, connecting me to a world which had now become my enemy. Or had it always been? Had I always been running from it? Domain paused at the door and looked back at me, the glow of the oil lamp reflected in the softness of his dark eyes.
Try to relax. Maybe get some sleep. I'll be back in a few hours.
The door closed behind him, leaving me standing in a room of memories I had not looked at in so long. With an unsteady sigh, I sank onto the bed, my hands fidgeting with the edge of the blanket as my eyes swept across the room. Sparse and simple, the one-room cabin held a kitchen area with a small ice chest, sink, and counter. A handmade pine table stood by the window, with a pillared candle resting in the center, and four mismatched wooden chairs gathered around it, as if waiting for guests to arrive. Beneath the ladder leading to the small loft above me sat a clawfoot tub and a wood stove with an old woven blanket folded next to it. It was the same blanket we had once lain on beside the fire and made frantic love for the last time. A collision of tears and grappling of hands, a desperate goodbye forever etched against my skin. I hadn't been inside this cabin in over 10 years. My recent visits were always carefully navigated outside, beneath the safety of open sky and trees, reluctant to confront the things that lay within these walls, afraid that if I did, they would pull me back in. And now here I was, my entire world reduced to the bags at my feet and the sleeping form of my child. I was in Domingue's world now. I had become an outlier.